Reassemble, Stephanie. Reassemble.
Alright, so here's a couple of the bearings that I've got for my telescope mount. They are ABEC 3 from China. They do feel very smooth, although they don't spin. They're pretty stiff. We'll put a mark on them right here so you can see what I'm talking about. If you can see the black part, I can get them to spin all the way around if I really spin hard. So this is what I'm going to do. They are sealed bearings. There's a stiff grease inside. Well, maybe not too stiff, but it's cold out here and they don't spin that well. So I want them to spin really well and have the least amount of friction possible. So I am going to remove the seals. Supposedly it's easy. You just have to stick something there and they pop right off. Do it on the inside of the bearing, and you don't want to shove in too hard. So there we go. Now it really doesn't spin any faster, but what I'm going to do is going to clean out the grease with some carburetor cleaner or mineral spirits, whatever it takes, and we'll go do that right now. I'll take the seal off of this bearing also. Do come off really easy. Just don't poke down into the bearings too much, so you don't want to damage the bearings or bearing holders. And you can see there's just a ton of grease inside here. Makes them really stiff. So I'll be right back after I go clean them out. I'll just squirt them off with some carburetor cleaner and we'll see what that does. Alright, everything I know about bearings in 60 seconds. Bearings use the ABEC rating system. That stands for the Annual Bearing Engineering Committee. The ABEC rating system uses odd numbers. They go ABEC 1, ABEC 3, 5, 7, 9. The higher the number, the more precise the bearings. The higher the number signifies that they have higher tolerances and higher precision. Most commercial telescopes mounts use ABEC 1. Some premiums use ABEC 3. I read that on the internet, so I know it's true. So once you get above 3, they get really expensive. I saw bearings same size for my telescope for 4,000 bucks. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. So I bought ABEC 3 from eBay. I'll leave links to the listings in the description. The place I bought them said ABEC 1 had an accuracy of within plus or minus 0.05 millimeters. The ABEC 3 has an accuracy between 0.005 millimeters, and they have a revolving speed of greater than 6,000 RPM, which I'm not going to be doing. Low noise, long life, and their application is for high-speed machine, high-speed model, instrument, precision instruments, and I guess that's what I'm going for. All right, let's install some bearings. So, bearings, I have had them in the freezer for overnight. I'm going to take the bearing seats, heat them up with propane torch so I can get the maximum expansion and contraction on the metal. And then I have cut some wooden discs, the exact same diameter as the bearings. And I will take some large sockets that I have. I'm going to use the wood disc between the bearings and the sockets so I don't mar the bearings up. Hopefully that will keep them intact, and I will just pound the bearings in with a mallet. So I've cleaned the inside of the bearing pocket out. I used some just aluminum polish, so hopefully that'll make it nice and slick. And everything goes together just right. So bearings. I do have two bearings that are the same outside diameter. The inside diameter is smaller on one. That will be for the deck axis. It will actually go on there. Don't screw those up. So that will be this one. We'll start with that. We'll start with the deck axis. Alright, other side. This one's a good one. This socket hasn't been quite big enough, but hopefully we'll push it a little bit. No, one go. All right, one was a little harder to get in, kind of destroyed the wood, but we're there. So let's go on to the next part. Okay, let's put this back together now. So the grease I'm going to use today, lubricating everything, is just Super Lube. I use it because it's super. It says so right here. Mostly I just use it because a couple of years ago when I bought it, it was all the rage for everybody redoing their mounts. And I had a really crappy mount and I was trying to fix it. Now I have a ton of it, so I'm going to use it. So we'll go just the opposite way we did tearing it apart. So we'll start with rebuilding the RA axis. So I'll take the ring gear and I'll lubricate the inside with a thin coat of the Super Lube. And I'll put a little on the inside edge. There's a plastic washer that goes here, so I'll use this to maybe stick the washer to the ring gear. This is the washer. Put that on there and put a little grease on the outside of that. Okay, now I'm going to try and avoid getting any grease on this outside part of the ring gear here, because that's where the clutch contacts the ring gear to hold it. Okay, so the inside of the RA axis will have a little cork disc that is the clutch axis. That's actually the clutch that will push against the ring gear. So there's a little hole that it sits in, and the lever pushes it up. So we'll drop that in there. Seems to be one of the hardest parts of the job. Okay. Now we'll take the ring gear and put it in there. Like so. All right, next goes on the two PTFE washers and the black washer. So we'll put a thin coat of lube on both sides of those. I always think that a thin coat works a lot better than a really thick glob of it. This black ring has a ridge on one side. That's what will contact the bearing, so you want that on the outside. Okay, now we got that on. We'll grease up the ring gear itself. Okay, now we got the ring gear greased up pretty good, going around the whole thing. We'll put it, should just slide right back into the we will tap it. complete. Seems to be spinning good. All right. Okay, last little bit. Put in the lock ring. Screw it on the end. Have the 3 locking screws. So screw that on. So this has a lip on the inside that will contact the bearing race on the inside. And on the outside we have the 2 holes for tightening and loosening. So put that on. Okay, I'm not going to put it on super tight. I don't want it binding up on the bearing, so we'll just tighten up the set screws. And 3. And now we put the setting circle back in. Line up this hole with this hole. And put the thumb screw back in. So one important thing I did find out about this, the nut inside here with the set screws. If you tighten the set screws up too tight, it makes the nut go out of round or set off round, and then when you put this setting circle on, it binds up and the RA won't spin. So I just fixed that, set them, I just barely tightened them enough just so the nut won't move to hold it, and not tight enough to make it bind up. So it still spins good. Alright, now we're moving on to the deck axis. Okay, first thing, we will grease up the inside of the ring gear. Alright, and since the deck axis has a covering that goes over most of the ring gear when you put it in, we'll grease that up right now before we stick it in. And on the top of the ring gear, there's going to be one of those PTFE spacers, so we'll grease this up a little bit. Okay, ring gear's all greased up good. Put a little grease on the top, and we will slide it right on. And there we go. Now, on the bottom, there are 2 PTFE spacers. So we'll grease that off. Grease that up a little. Place the clear one on. Put a little grease on the top of that. And put the black one on. And it has a little ridge on the outside to contact the bearing. And there we go. And now it's ready to go back in here. So first thing we need to do is put the little cork clutch piece in. All right. Tap it down a little. All right. Now we'll put the lock nut on, lock ring with the set screws, and hopefully we will learn from what we did last time to not tighten them so much. All right, last setting circle. Put on the plastic washers first, then the metal washer. Then we put on the setting circle. And we tighten it on with the nut. All right. We're back together. Everything feels good. Now comes the hard part, the worm gears. Okay, now for the bane of our existence. Dreaded worm gear. This is the worm gear, little spiral gears that move like that interface with the ring gear, and that's what causes your mount to move during tracking. On my mount, it goes on this way. There will be 2 screws that go in here that will pull the gear into the ring gear, and two bolts that go up through the bottom that hold the gear in place. And then this center screw pushes the gear away from the ring gear. So you have to, with a trial and error, adjust everything so the worm gear is just interfacing with the ring gear. If it's too far out, it will have movement side to side, and that's what we call backlash, and backlash bad. So we just put these 4 bolts in loosely at first, and then start adjusting and tightening and getting everything in just the perfect spot. You don't want it too far in, or it will bind up on the ring gear and wear things, and it won't move easily. So it's just a big trial and error. Once you get these adjusted, when you tighten up, you want to leave these 2 a little bit loose so everything can move back and forth. Once you get this all adjusted, if you tighten those up, it might screw everything up, so then you start over. So let's get on it. All right, we're pretty much back together, except for my fancy motor mounts. Got the worm gears feeling as good as I can get them. They feel really smooth. So let's put this on, tighten up the belt. Or scope, screw back in. All right, it's ready to go back out under the stars. Too bad I got another 10 days of clouds. But soon it will be out. And we'll see if all of this was worth it.
Over 1 month later.
Okay, so I'm polar aligned, focused. I ran through the guiding assistant, did everything I was supposed to do there. I have changed my exposure duration to 0.5 seconds. That seems to have helped a lot. I seem to be guiding under 1 arc second. So that's a vast improvement what I was doing before. Every once in a while my RA axis looks like it has a little stiction going on, so I'll have to look into that. But other than that, I think we're good. So I think all that work was worth it. So like, share, and subscribe. Clouds suck.